The year is 2025. The United States has entered a new era of immigration restriction. In January, President Trump signed a series of executive actions dramatically altering the landscape of U.S. immigration policy. These actions, met with both praise and fierce opposition, signal a significant departure from the policies of the previous administration. They represent a tightening of immigration control, focusing heavily on border security, interior enforcement, and limitations on legal pathways. These changes come at a time of intense political debate regarding immigration. The issue has deeply divided the nation. Proponents of the new measures argue they are necessary to protect national security and preserve American jobs. Opponents, however, contend that these actions are cruel, discriminatory, and counter to the nation's historical commitment to welcoming immigrants. The impact of these executive actions is far-reaching. They affect not only those seeking to enter the United States, but also those already residing within its borders. From asylum seekers stranded at the southern border to undocumented immigrants living in fear of deportation, the consequences of these policies are being felt across the country. This essay delves into the specifics of these recent executive actions, examining their impact on various aspects of U.S. immigration. We will explore the changes to border security, interior enforcement, asylum policies, citizenship regulations, and legal protections. We will also analyze the immediate and potential future impacts of these policies on immigrants, their families, and the broader American community. Legal experts are already weighing in on the constitutionality of these measures, predicting a wave of court challenges that could shape the future of immigration law. Community leaders and activists are mobilizing, organizing town halls and rallies to voice their concerns and support for affected individuals. Amidst the political turmoil, everyday life continues, with families striving to maintain a sense of normalcy despite the uncertainty surrounding their future. As we navigate this new era of immigration restriction, the resilience and determination of those affected will undoubtedly shape the narrative of America's evolving identity. Central to President Trump's recent executive actions is a heightened focus on border security. This has been a cornerstone of his administration's policy, aiming to address what he describes as a crisis at the southern border. Declaring a national emergency at the southern border, the administration has taken a multi-pronged approach to restrict the flow of migrants entering the United States. This declaration has allowed for the reallocation of funds and resources to bolster border defenses. The most immediate change is the deployment of 1,500 troops to the southern border. These troops are tasked with supporting Border Patrol agents and providing logistical assistance. This militarization of the border is meant to bolster security and deter illegal crossings. The presence of military personnel is intended to act as a strong deterrent to those considering crossing the border unlawfully. The administration has also effectively sealed off the southern border to asylum seekers. This has been achieved through a series of executive orders and policy changes aimed at tightening entry requirements. This was achieved by ending the CBP One app, a mobile application that allowed migrants to schedule appointments at ports of entry to pursue asylum claims. The termination of this app has left many migrants in limbo, unsure of how to proceed with their asylum requests. Furthermore, the administration has reinstated the controversial Remain in Mexico policy. This policy, officially known as the Migrant Protection Protocols, has been a subject of intense debate and legal challenges. This policy requires asylum seekers to wait in Mexico while their cases are processed in U.S. immigration courts, a process that can take months or even years. During this time, many migrants face precarious living conditions and limited access to basic services. The combined effect of these measures is a significant hardening of the U.S.-Mexico border, making it increasingly difficult for migrants, particularly asylum seekers, to enter the United States legally. This has led to a dramatic decrease in the number of asylum claims being processed. These actions have drawn sharp criticism from human rights organizations and immigration advocates. They argue that the administration's policies are inhumane and fail to address the root causes of migration. They argue that these measures violate international law and deny vulnerable individuals their right to seek asylum. Critics also point out that the policies disproportionately affect families and children, who are often the most vulnerable. The deployment of troops, they argue, further militarizes the border, creating a climate of fear and intimidation. This heightened security presence has led to increased tensions and confrontations at the border. The consequences of these policies are already being felt, with thousands of migrants stranded in dangerous conditions in Mexican border towns, desperate for safety and a chance to plead their cases. Many are living in makeshift camps with inadequate shelter, food and medical care, facing an uncertain future. The Trump administration's focus on immigration extends far beyond the physical border, reaching deep into the heart of American cities and towns. New interior enforcement measures have cast a wide net, targeting undocumented immigrants residing within the United States. These measures are part of a broader strategy to tighten immigration controls and increase deportations. These measures have created a climate of fear and uncertainty in immigrant communities. Families are living in constant anxiety, unsure if a routine day could end in detention or deportation. One of the most significant changes is the expansion of expedited removal. This policy, which allows immigration authorities to deport undocumented immigrants without a hearing before a judge, has been broadened significantly. Previously, expedited removal was limited to those apprehended near the border. Now, it applies to a much broader range of undocumented immigrants, potentially affecting millions nationwide. This shift has raised concerns about due process and the rights of individuals to a fair hearing. This process, previously limited to those apprehended near the border, now applies to a broader range of undocumented immigrants, potentially affecting millions nationwide. The expansion of this policy has led to increased raids and detentions in urban areas. Additionally, the administration has implemented a mandatory registration and fingerprinting program for all non-citizens. This program aims to create a comprehensive database of non-citizens living in the United States. Failure to comply with this program carries severe criminal penalties. Non-citizens who do not register or provide their fingerprints could face arrest and deportation. This measure aims to create a more robust tracking system for non-citizens, but critics argue that it is overly broad and could lead to racial profiling and discrimination. They fear that the program could be used to target specific communities unfairly. Further restrictions on work authorization have also been implemented, making it more difficult for undocumented immigrants to legally obtain employment. These restrictions are part of an effort to reduce the economic incentives for undocumented immigration. Even those with pending applications for legal status are finding it harder to secure work permits. This has left many in a precarious position, unable to support themselves or their families. This policy aims to discourage undocumented immigration by limiting economic opportunities. However, it also impacts businesses that rely on immigrant labor, leading to broader economic consequences. The Trump administration has also threatened to withhold federal funding from sanctuary cities. These cities, which have policies limiting their cooperation with federal immigration enforcement, have become flashpoints in the immigration debate. These cities, which have policies limiting their cooperation with federal immigration enforcement, have become flashpoints in the immigration debate. The administration argues that these policies undermine federal law and endanger public safety. The administration argues that these policies undermine federal law and endanger public safety, while proponents maintain that they are essential for building trust between immigrant communities and local law enforcement. The debate over sanctuary cities continues to be a contentious issue, reflecting the broader national divide over immigration policy. Section 4. Seeking Refuge. A Narrowing Path. The right to seek asylum is a fundamental principle of international law, allowing individuals fleeing persecution in their home countries to seek protection in another country. However, the Trump administration's recent actions have dramatically narrowed the path to asylum in the United States. By effectively closing the southern border to asylum seekers, the administration has made it nearly impossible for those seeking refuge to present their cases at ports of entry. The reinstatement of the Remain in Mexico policy further jeopardizes the safety and well-being of asylum seekers, forcing them to wait in dangerous conditions in Mexico while their cases languish in backlogged immigration courts. Furthermore, the administration has taken steps to redefine what constitutes a valid asylum claim. New guidelines dramatically restrict the eligibility for asylum based on gang violence and domestic abuse, grounds that have been recognized as legitimate reasons for seeking refuge under U.S. and international law. These policy changes have been met with widespread condemnation from human rights groups and legal experts. They argue that these actions violate U.S. obligations under international treaties and undermine the very principle of asylum. The consequences of these policies are dire. leaving vulnerable individuals and families with few options for seeking safety and protection. Section 5. Citizenship in Question, the Birthright Debate. One of the most controversial aspects of President Trump's executive actions is the questioning of birthright citizenship. The 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution guarantees citizenship to any person born or naturalized in the United States. This principle, known as birthright citizenship, has been a cornerstone of American identity for over a century. The Trump administration has declared its intention to end birthright citizenship for children born in the United States to undocumented immigrant parents. This move, which has sparked fierce legal and political debate, represents a significant departure from established interpretation of the 14th Amendment. Legal experts are divided on the constitutionality of ending birthright citizenship through executive action. Some argue that the president has the authority to interpret the 14th Amendment and that Congress has the power to regulate citizenship. Others contend that any change to birthright citizenship requires a constitutional amendment. The potential impact of this policy shift is enormous. It could create a class of people born in the United States who are not recognized as U.S. citizens, leading to widespread disenfranchisement and legal limbo. The move has been condemned by many as discriminatory and a violation of fundamental human rights. Section 6. A pause on resettlement, the future of refugee admissions. The United States has a long history of providing refuge to those fleeing persecution and violence. The Refugee Resettlement Program, a cornerstone of U.S. humanitarian efforts, has offered a lifeline to millions of people seeking safety and a new beginning. However, the Trump administration has taken steps to significantly curtail the program. In January 2025, President Trump announced an indefinite suspension of refugee resettlement. This decision halts the arrival of refugees already approved for resettlement and leaves thousands stranded in precarious situations worldwide. The administration argues that the pause is necessary to review and redesign the resettlement program, prioritizing what it calls assimilation. Critics of the suspension argue that it is discriminatory and abandons U.S. commitments to vulnerable populations. They point to the rigorous vetting process already in place for refugees, which includes extensive security checks and interviews. The suspension, they argue, does little to address legitimate security concerns while punishing those in desperate need of protection. The future of the refugee resettlement program remains uncertain. The administration has provided few details about its plans for redesigning the program, leaving resettlement agencies and refugee advocates in limbo. The suspension has sent shockwaves through the resettlement community, raising concerns about the future of U.S. humanitarian leadership and the fate of those seeking refuge.